Thank you, Jeannie. One of the things that has been a catalyst for the development of education reform in the last few years, and has happened since the Milwaukee Parental Choice Program, is that two organizations exist that didn't exist then. One is the Center for Education Reform, the other Empower America, both of which are catalysts for change in this area, and I commend those organizations. During the last presidential campaign, there were a lot of jokes and stories, and exaggerations, of course. And one of my favorite was that in Hillary Clinton's America, every child would have a lawyer. Well, I have some good news and some bad news for Mrs. Clinton. The good news is that the kids have gone out and gotten themselves a lawyer. The bad news is it's me. And guess what? The kids want to go to school with Chelsea. And that is what we are here to talk about today. I will not be addressing so much the legal aspects of school choice. The Institute earlier this year put out a publication which Jeannie Allen has distributed, and we have copies as well. Questions and answers, answers to the most frequently asked legal questions about school choice. And we are happy to supply that. The Institute is currently counseling school choice efforts really from coast to coast. And our motto, which we often repeat, is if you have a school choice plan, you have a lawyer. And that is one that we intend to keep in terms of defending programs that are enacted and helping programs become enacted that are legally defensible. Rather, what my remarks are today and my co-panelists will be addressing the imperative of school choice. We've heard a lot of good ideas today about public school reform, and I support all of them. But I believe that the preeminent reform, the basic reform, the reform that will ultimately drive all other reform, is school choice. There are two reasons why I believe that that is so, and why school choice is absolutely essential. The first is that it is the only reform proposal that immediately moves kids from some of the worst schools to good schools. And it does not do so 10 years from now. It does not even do so 2 years from now. It does so today. And as a lawyer who represents real human beings, this is so urgent to me. If we can get 100 kids or 1,000 or 10,000 out of schools that are recipes for disaster for these children and get them into schools that are wholesome, that their parents have chosen for them, that is a dramatic and wonderful improvement. The second and broader essential aspect of school choice is this. It is the only reform that transfers power, real power, from bureaucrats to parents. What we saw in Wisconsin was that public school reform truly started on the day that low-income children, for the first time in the history of this country, were able to walk out of the door of failing schools, and more importantly, to take some of their money with them. And we have seen an impetus for public school reform in Milwaukee as a result that has been very, very impressive as a result of that. So for those two reasons, I believe that school choice should be first and foremost in the education reform agenda. In terms of providing general logistical advice for school choice, the first thing that I would like to say is that there is no model school choice program. A lot of times people call Jeannie, people call us at the Institute or some of our sister organizations and ask us for model school choice legislation. There is none, and if there was any, the last place on earth you would want to look for it is Washington, D.C. Nonetheless, basically the rule of thumb is that what works
for your state or your community is what works for your state or your community. There are three very concrete rules of thumb, though, that many of us have witnessed in working with various states and seeing what has worked in this area and what has not worked. And they are as follows. Number one, keep it simple. The best school choice plan, and Representative Shuttle just handed me his bill in Arizona, and it is on the front and back of a single sheet of paper, and I immediately decided I like that school choice plan. It has got to be simple because people have got to understand what it is that they are getting, what their kids are going to be getting. One of the problems in New Jersey, and we were involved in the battle that for now is over, at least for the next year in New Jersey. One of the problems from the very beginning was that plan was so mind-numbingly complex that no one I know, including the people who drafted it, could explain that plan. And when we tried to talk to our clients, and they asked us questions like, how much money are we going to get? And the answer was, I don't know. It was very, very hard to get people mobilized and energized and invested in that program. Number two, whatever you do with your school choice program, please make sure that its principal beneficiaries are the kids who need choice the most, and that is low-income children. They are the kids who are in the worst schools. They are the kids who, by definition, have the fewest choices, and they are the kids who desperately need quality education. And number three, often the question is asked, legislation or referendum? What we learned in the battlefield of California is that those who oppose choice are always going to be able to outspend us. And when the battle is able to be turned into sound bites, it will be successfully waged by those who have the most money and the most to lose. Of the three battlefields in which we fight for this issue, the courtroom, the legislative arena, and the election booth, even though the polls always start out in our favor, the one in which we are at the greatest disadvantage is in the initiative and referendum area, because there is no limit to the amount of money that can be spent on the other side. In the courtroom, we all have the same number of pages in our briefs, and that is why I enjoy fighting on that particular battlefield the most, because we get the same number of words, but we also have justice and equity on our side, and that gives us a tremendous benefit. In the legislative arena, we may be able to turn the tide as well. I am going to conclude my remarks on that and introduce you to